Got Eternal Oketra versus Braids Conjuerer Adept this time. And we've got a Tithe is search for planes. Yes, we've got land tax as well. Yeah, alright, we'll keep that. We are on the draw, which makes our land tax and Tithe much better. Starting things off on turn 1 with Halimar Depths. Get to reorganise the top 3 cards, and wow, there's more ramp for us in mono white ramp, so let's just start things off with we'll definitely drop the planes, and then I think we go for Tithe. Yeah, we'll go for Tithe as soon as our opponent drops a land, or at the end of their turn anyway. They might even counter a Tithe if they think we need the lands from it. And that gets through pretty quickly, so maybe they assumed that we weren't going to make any plays on their turn. Either that, or they don't have counters to hold up. And we draw into a Sword of the Animist. So now I say we go for the land tax and hold up Enlightened Shooter. Alright, yeah, it looks like no counters for our opponent, because they're letting things down pretty quickly. That's a good way to tell on Magic Online. Don't know how common that is in paper, whether people in blue tend to bluff that they might have something. But on Magic Online, if people F6 through the turn, then it usually means that they don't have anything to do during your turn. A Seer's Lantern. So we'll go for Enlightened Shooter in response to that, and we'll grab a Sol Ring. And we could actually go in for our Commander next turn if we want to. And then our land tax triggers, we've got the Sol Ring on top, haven't we? So we're going to say no to that because it will shuffle things up. We've got a land to make anyway. So we'll go like that. Like that. Oh no, we can't go for our Commander at all. And I was actually going to go for the Gauntlet of Power anyway. But apparently... Actually, should have gone for Knight of the White Orchid before going for the land drop there. But not to worry, I think if they drop a land next turn, we'll still get the land tax trigger, so it's not going to hurt us too much. I think we'll drop the Skull Clamp. That's more valuable to us than Sword of the Animist. So we'll just get that through now, whilst our opponent does not have any counter magic held up. You never know when they're going to draw into it. Now a Reef Worm, when it dies, so we tend to be worried about exile in white. Need to actually draw into some exile effects though. Cavalier of Dawn is destroy, isn't it? Yes, so we're not going to be doing that to the Reef Worm. We'll get all 3 basics with land tax. That'll set us up for the next 3 turns. And of course, draw into a Tech Edge as well. We can actually Tech Edge that Castle Ventress. I think I just want to get down the Gauntlet of Power here. Let's play a land just in case they've got Force Spike. And that comes down. We obviously name white. And then we can play Sword of the Animist. And now it's time to see if our opponent just passes the turn with the Castle Ventress held up. I'm a big fan of this card. It's really good if you just want to play the counter magic game. Because if you decide not to counter anything your opponent does, you at least get to do something on their turn. And Scry too is a very powerful ability. Now a Buried Ruin, so definitely worried about artifacts. Don't actually know what Braids Conjuerer Adept does. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player may put an artifact, creature or land from hand to battlefield. Yeah, I think I've played against that in multiplayer before. Then a Followed Footsteps. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token copy of it. Ooh, that's not good. Yeah, that's going to be really tough to deal with. We need to get into some exile effects pretty pronto. Might even be worth going for Cavalier of Dawn onto that thing. We'll go for land tax again, do a bit more thinning. More mana in Ancient Tomb. Well, we don't need more mana, do we? We could have 10 mana there, which is enough for Cavalier of Dawn and our Commander. Do we want to Tech Edge is the question. We've actually got 10 mana here. Let's get down our commander first. And then, yeah, I think we hold off on the Tectonic Edge. Let's go Cavalier of Dawn. And we get a zombie token. Then we'll get rid of that aura, because we really don't want multiple reef worms. One reef worm is pain in the neck enough without getting lots of reef worms on the go. And then we can just put the Skull Clamp onto God Eternal Oketra. For any of you who haven't seen me play this commander before, a really good tactic with the God Eternal cycle is if you put Skull Clamp onto them, they go to the graveyard, then third from the top in your library from the graveyard, and they trigger Skull Clamp when they die as well, so you actually draw 2 cards when this thing dies and end up with that on top of your library for next turn. Braids coming down now, and it's at the beginning of each player's upkeep. So our opponent's obviously got something that they want to take advantage of here. Let me just change the zones on this quickly before I forget. Now, this is during the upkeep, so we can't take too much advantage off of it. Let's just go for the Tech Edge there, and then an even Mind Sensor isn't awful. What does this thing become? It becomes a big 9/9 at some point, doesn't it? I think we just have to start swinging in and pressuring our opponent. So let's go Tech Edge onto that thing. Then we'll drop a Plains. We'll grab ourselves an even Mind Sensor. We could actually go for Skull Clamp on that, couldn't we? And try and get into an answer. I think that's a pretty good idea. Oh no, we can't. It's got +1/+1, so being hurt by our anthems there. Alright, so in that case, let's put +1/+1 on that. We want to spread the... oh, and I've overtapped there. We want to spread the threats out as best we can. And the more lands we can get out of our library, the better. So let's just start swinging in. And if it loses us the game, so be it. We're not really drawing too well, but we're not doing terribly. We've got plenty of mana. Still a whole bunch of basics in the library as well. So definitely going to block with the Reef Worm. They might as well keep themselves off of commander damage. Do they keep the Golem in play? They do decide to keep the Golem. And now ending up with a 3/3. Yeah, that's just a 3/3 that turns into a 6/6. Now let's see what Braids can cheat into play. We haven't drawn into any removal, unfortunately. A Phyrexian in Jester. So that's exile, isn't it? Exile a non-token creature. And they go after our God Eternal Oketra. We've got plenty of mana to recast her, so not really worried about that at all. Does make our Skull Clamp fall off, though. Followed by a Coveted Jewel. I think we can take this off of our opponent, can't we? Whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls attacks you and they're not blocked. And I don't think they have any flyers either, so we can get the Aven Mind Sensor through and steal this away from our opponent. Yeah, and that player draws 3 cards and gains control of it. That's really good, so let's... The Vigilance is actually going to be relevant here. Our opponent draws 3 cards and they can tap that for 3 mana of any one colour. So we've got plenty of mana and we've got Vigilance creatures to swing in with. Braids is going to trigger and do nothing for us again. We'll get an extra land down, which isn't something you often do in mono white. Let's go for our commander again. And then we'll go for our Stoneforge Mystic. If they counter here, it's not the end of the world. They do not. We'll go Stoneforge. And that gets us into another zombie, which makes it more difficult for them to grab the Coveted Jewel back once we've taken it from them. Stoneforge Mystic enters. And we'll definitely have a look here. We can go for, well, haste pretty much, isn't it? Let's go for the Swiftfoot Boots. Play that out. And then it's Swiftfoot Boots onto God Eternal Oketra. And we will put the clamp. Yeah, we'll put the clamp onto the Aven Mind Sensor. I want to try and push through as much damage as possible. We play a land. And then we've got 6 mana for whatever we draw into with the coveted jewel. Oh, and we'll actually have 9 with this, won't we? So, yeah, I'm not going to bother moving the sword. Let's just leave that floating mana be. And we'll swing in with everything. Sword of the Animist triggers again. Blocking our commander with the fish, which will turn into a 6/6. And then the golem chump blocking a warrior. And blocking with the Phyrexian Ingester as well. We get the coveted jewel. I think we want rid of Phyrexian Ingester over the golem, so we'll attack like that. Yes, and we'll say OK. Then we gain control of and untap the coveted jewel. Our opponent taps it in response. I don't know what they can do with that 3 mana during the blocking phase. Emeria Shepherd is another evasive creature, that's good. Nothing to grab out of the library or out of the graveyard with it though. You may return a non-land permanent. Yes, so we can't even get tech edge with that. The fish turns into the 6/6 whale. And we get rid of the Phyrexian Ingester. So let's tap that for mana. And we'll take our opponent by surprise with the Emeria Shepherd. They might go for some kind of colourless board wipe. Oh, and we've knocked them down to 1 as well. That's going to be really unlucky if we don't win the game from here. I'm actually going to leave the Mind Stone up because we might want to draw. So let's put the Sword of the Animist there. And we'll put the Skull Clamp onto, not the sword, we will put the Skull Clamp onto our commander for reasons that we explained previously. And we'll leave it at that. Argument to be made for us putting out our Angel so that we can fly over for a victory next turn, just in case our opponent gets a bunch of blockers into play here. But we've got haste on Emeria Shepherd anyway. Okay, Jingataxius. I don't think that's fast enough, unfortunately, for our opponent. When does this trigger? At the end step? Yeah, so we're going to give our opponent a chance to respond here if we go after Jingataxius during the main phase, but I'm going to crack the Mind Stone. And if we get into some spot removal, it's definitely going in towards Jingataxius. Fate Spinner. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player chooses draw step, main phase, or combat phase. That player skips each instance of the chosen type this turn. We choose our main phase, I think, there. Maybe untap. We could get away with untap as well. No, main phase, I think. Now then, before our opponent's end step, we will crack the Mind Stone, see if we can get into some spot removal. We cannot, we just get into a land, drawn plenty of those this game. And our opponent draws a whole heap of stuff here. So they now have 10 cards in hand and they're going to have to discard 3 at the cleanup step. Just getting rid of a bunch of stuff. Braids is actually going to help us here, because we can put haste onto our Emeria Shepherd if they can get rid of Aven Mind Sensor. So let's get the Emeria Shepherd into play. And then we can choose draw step, main phase, or combat phase. I think I'm actually going to skip the draw phase. Our opponent might do something to us. So let's put the Swiftfoot Boots onto Emeria. And we've got 2 evasive creatures in the air here, so they have to be able to deal with both of them. Then we'll just try and go wide on our opponent. Oh, actually, they might have... Is it Ether Eyes? The thing that returns all the... No, apparently not. I was overthinking it there. Our opponent does have 7 cards in hand, so it's worth thinking about. But our opponent saved us the bother there. Yeah, I think I would have pulled back most things there and just swung in with the Flyers, because they might have the card that bounces attackers back to the hand. You can definitely see what Braids is going for there, cheating out things like Jingataxius. and playing things like Fate Spinner to mess up your turns. But we just got too much mana going for them there too quickly, which is a hell of a feat in mono white, but thanks to things like Tithe and Land Tax and Gauntlet of Power, Sword of the Animist is a really good one in decks like mono white that have difficulty ramping. We, yeah, thanks to those things, managed to outramp our opponent and get a lot of stuff going very quickly. The Reef Worm is a difficult thing to play around because it is worrying knowing that it will eventually tick up to a 9/9, but sometimes you've just got to swing in at it, put up with having a 9/9 in play, and hopefully you'll draw into some kind of removal, or a board wipe once the 9/9 has hit the field is a good thing as well. We just managed to go wide on our opponent and fly over the top of our opponent in this case, so yeah, that worked out quite nicely for us against the very powerful Braids Conjuerer Adept. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.